Hello, this is Hannah, and you're listening to the University of Chicago Public Policy Podcasts. You're listening to Root of Conflict, a podcast about violent conflict around the world and the people, societies, and policy issues it affects. In this series, you'll hear from experts and practitioners who conduct research, implement programs, and use data analysis to address some of the most pressing challenges facing our world. Root of Conflict is produced by UC3P in collaboration with the Pearson Institute for the Study and Resolution of Global Conflict, a research institute housed within the Harris School of Public Policy at the University of Chicago. What is the role of mothers in counterterrorism efforts? Within conflict, women have traditionally been viewed as victims that need protecting. However, their involvement is much more nuanced than that. In this episode, we speak with Professor Amal Hamada, Professor of Political Science and Gender Studies at Cairo University. We talk about the role of gender when discussing conflict, the women's movement in Iran, and Palestinian mothers today.
My name is Jordan Enos. I'm a second-year Master in Public Policy student and a Pearson Fellow.
Hi, I'm Raphael, Rony, Antony, and I'm a first-year MPP student and a first-time podcast recorder.
Hi, I'm Isabella Pestana. I'm a first-year MPP student and a Pearson Fellow.
It's an honor to have Dr. Hamada at the University of Chicago today. Dr. Hamada, welcome. Thank you for being here. Can you tell us about yourself and your work?
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Amal Hamada. I'm an associate professor of political science in Cairo University and the director of Women's Studies Unit at the university. I'm trained as a political scientist, but for the last maybe 2 decades, I've been working more on interdisciplinary approaches, trying to see different angles to what I believe everything is political. I felt the need that I need to understand more about different approaches in sociology, anthropology, etc. I work on gender issues. I'm not a fan of formal politics, meaning the formal, more traditional forms of political participation of youth, women, even citizens. For the last 10 years or more, I've been working on the less formal dimensions of political participation, how ordinary people see, practice politics on their daily life. This is me.
Thank you. Yesterday, you gave a talk on the role of mothers in counterterrorism. How does the way women are depicted in the media and public discourse influence the public's view and government decisions regarding counterterrorism?
Okay, this is a very complicated question because on the one hand, women are portrayed in the media as the sweet, feminine, need protection kind of individual. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they're expected, especially mothers, to do miracles. Mm-hmm. And we can't, when it comes to portraying women in conflict, the mainstream used to portray women in conflict when they saw them, because a couple of decades ago, they didn't see women in conflict. And when they saw them, they only saw them as victims of rape, victims that need protection, etc. And later on, we discovered this is not the case. Women have agency and sometimes bad agency. Sometimes they become terrorists themselves. They are warriors. They are peace builders. But the perception changed a little bit to build on the expectation of the ability to make miracles that, okay, so you're not a victim, so you are a hero. And you're expected to act as a hero. And I think this is unfair because not all of us are heroes. We're all human. Some of us are heroes. Some of us are victims. And even the same person can be a hero, a victim, and an average person, depends on the context. But the way the media and the policies are categorizing women, it's just too flat. It doesn't see the complexity of the situation. I can be violent at a moment because I feel that violence is the only way to protect my right, but this does not mean that I'm a violent person. Or, the whole discourse about survival victim of rape. Are we victims of rape or survivors of rape? You're taking agency from the woman, deciding that for a moment I'm a victim, but this does not describe me as a person for the rest of my life. This is why I don't really engage with how the media is portraying women, because it's too flat. Living realities of women everywhere is too complex. It's not that one dimension.
Theme of women's role in the resistance, I hear you, is nuanced and complex and probably depends a lot on context.
Yes.
Yesterday, you talked about equipping women with the tools, and mothers especially, with the tools to kind of support their family and maybe guide them against terrorism. Can you talk about the tools women need to be able to support their families?
Knowledge, because one of the things, maybe specific, talking about radical groups, radical/terrorist violence. I know the term is very controversial, so let's go with all the meanings. Discourse, it's kind of, they propagate an absolute version of truth. They have the version of truth, okay? And, it's a very difficult time where the youth very skeptical about everything and they have doubts about everything. When someone gets to them with an absolute definition of truth and no one can counter this, it becomes very hard to resist. And imagine a mother living in a small village anywhere, okay, with her kid, usually males, that's unfortunate, coming up to the mother to tell her that what you're doing is forbidden, it's haram, and you're going to be punished by Allah. You're going to burn in hell, okay? And I have the way to save you and to save the rest of the world. If she doesn't have the knowledge, it's not only that she cannot save him, it's she's going to join. So if we provide women with knowledge, specifically what I'm working on, religious knowledge, different understanding of religion, different interpretation of knowledge, counter discourse to the religious discourse, terrorism. This would make a huge difference. She will be able to protect the child, herself, and the rest of the family, because it's kind of we're losing one by one to the terrorist groups. So my main focus is how can we educate, and yesterday there was this lady who was a little bit skeptical about me blaming women for their kids becoming terrorists. God forbid. I don't intend to blame women for anything, but just can we equip them with tools to fight back, to know their limits, to know their potential? I think this is the case. So yes, economic empowerment is important. Definitely it's important. Political empowerment is. Without this knowledge, it's not going to take us anywhere.
Your research includes studies of women's groups around the world, women in Russia, women in Black, Code Pink. Do you think those groups are the best kind of avenue for knowledge that you're talking about for women? Or how do you disrupt a culture in which that underlies in the absolute truth that may lead to terrorism or radicalization?
Well, they might not be the best, but they're there and they are appealing. And it depends on what you need. So if you're looking for sort of activism, anti-war, Women in Black would be the perfect venue for you. But if you're looking for a knowledge, like abstract religious knowledge, maybe Women in Black wouldn't do anything, wouldn't provide any answers. Or other groups, which I didn't have the chance to talk about, Islamic feminist groups in the Middle East in general. And even in the US, they have very, very interesting, liberating, challenging, controversial kind of discourse regarding religion and religious knowledge. And these might be helpful. But having said this, maybe even them are not appropriate for a woman living in a very distant village. Maybe we need to bridge, because this is a very sophisticated knowledge, not applicable to anyone, not convenient to anyone. So maybe we need new form of groups that can kind of explain and make it more answerable to the average women. But what I'm trying to do is just to highlight the ability and the potential that these groups have. Maybe it's just an example, and we can build our more convenient examples depending on the context.
During your talk, you also talked about how mothers around the world share this deep love for their family and commitment for their family and their children, regardless of where they're from. And I think another theme mothers experience across the world, especially in times of conflict and strife, is they're often the ones responsible for keeping their families together. You even mentioned that women would do anything to get food on the table for their family if that's the most pressing need. How do you respond to women who may think, my goal right now is to keep a roof over my family's heads at night, to keep food on the table? How do I prioritize learning or seeking out knowledge that may prevent my children going down a path of radicalization?
But I think this would require women to reflect a little bit about what does it mean to be a good mother, okay? Because I shared that I'm a mother myself, and I have 3 children in my eye. My eldest is 29 and my youngest is 26. So they're not kids, but they're kids. And I think throughout the journey, and I don't want to generalize my experience, but living, especially in the last decade or so, it takes a lot of reflection. What does it mean to keep a roof on top of my kid and roof over their head and food on the table? And how am I helping them face the real world? Because if I'm not equipping them with knowledge and skills and capacity and trust, it's not about the food and the roof. It's different. And in this difficult time, it's even become more meaningful about dignity and food. We're not animals. We're human. Human have dignity. Is it only about having food and roof? No matter how do you get the food and the roof? Or as a mother, I need to tell my kids that it's you. You have to live in dignity, even if you are eating a potato fried on wood.
Thank you. Your research interests include gender issues in the Middle East, with a special focus on women's daily strategies for their lives and conflict-related issues. What are some of these daily strategies? How do women in the Middle East face conflict differently than their male counterparts?
Okay, this is a very good question. I used to believe that maneuvering is not resistance. Resistance is clear resistance. You have to stand up and fight, physically or with words. But I discovered from listening to stories of women about their daily little struggles, how they survive and make a living and make a meaning out of their life, that sometimes maneuvering is resistance. Building alliance with other women in the family or even other men is resistance. But I cannot list the strategies. It's different. Maybe sometimes, and I know some of my colleagues would hate maneuvering because they think it's a sign of weakness. But for me, I understand the structure. And sometimes the cost, open resistance is very high, and women cannot really, because of the structure, they cannot really pay the price. So how do they maneuver? For instance, domestic violence. Okay, well, the easy way out of domestic violence for a middle class, liberal, Western women would be walk out of the relationship, leave, get the divorce. But this is not the reality of an uneducated woman, or even educated but she doesn't have a job, or she has a job but it doesn't pay enough, or she has kids she needs to protect, and she cannot simply walk out of a relationship. Does this mean that she's happily living, enjoying being beaten and insulted? Definitely no. Does she resist? Yes, she does. She maneuvers sometimes different techniques. And I think if we pay respect to these forms, maybe we can help her rather than blaming her for staying. We're kind of, why are you staying in such a bad relationship? You should respect yourself and leave. But when we listen to her stories, maybe we would, as scholars, as professors, we would learn that her experience is teaching us. It's not us telling her what to do.
October in the United States was Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I think there is a misconception that why don't women just leave? And you have the agency if you are educated. And a lot of times women don't because of various reasons. And I think being there for their children is probably a primary cause for staying. Can you say what maneuvering looks like? Is that figuring out survival in a conflict-ridden relationship or community?
Sometimes maneuvering would be focusing on your kids rather than yourself. And I know this might sound naive, but this is what mothers sometimes do. So they know that maybe I don't have a life out of this, but I can help my kids to have a life. Okay, focusing on the kids rather than on herself. Sometimes maneuvering would mean even avoiding the significant other in heated conversation. Maybe saving money behind his back. Maybe giving him the silent treatment. Maybe making him suffer in sex. Use different things women do. And I understand from a feminist perspective, this might be too little. And I agree, this is too little. But every individual, every woman, she knows what she's capable of. It's not about take a jump of faith. No, it's not that easy. Maybe for an empowered woman, yes, it's easy. I will definitely walk out of the relationship, but this is not the case. And it doesn't mean that the other women are not worth of respect of their experience.
Much of your work involves the theme and the role of women in peace building. Can you talk about how we involve men, particularly in heavily patriarchal societies?
But this is the point. I believe women have agency no matter what. Okay, it's just how do we define and contextualize agency. Okay, this is one. Second, definitely, as much as you can do anything without the help of women, you can do nothing without the help of men. You have because we're living together. So I believe, yes, we do need to bring them on board. The question is maybe focusing too much on the formal level, women become a threat to men. And reading in strategic and peace studies, there is this belief that when women are occupying formal positions, whether in negotiation, in government, etc., men feel threatened that she's taking their position. Maybe working on building the trust that we're not a threat. It's just that we're taking responsibility for the destiny of everyone. We're just doing our part. And working on the informal level, this might help building the trust more. So, I don't know, maybe.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, so we're going to start talking about, I feel, one of your important interest areas, and that is Iran.
Yes.
We're going to dive into the topic, that is what has been happening there for the last 1 year, especially since the death of Gina Mahsa Amini. The protests that followed after that, in your opinion, as a scholar on Iranian history and Iranian politics, how has it changed, the protests that have been happening over the last year or so?
I've been working on Iran ever since 1990. It's a very, very, very complicated and interesting example. Unfortunately, there is kind of iron curtain what's happening in Iran. So we don't really know what's happening. We know about the protest. We know about the tragic death of Mahsa Amini. But unfortunately, we don't know much. And though this is very alarming, but I feel that this is very assuring that something big is happening on the ground, because if nothing is happening, then the authorities would not mind sharing, because it would show that they are in control. So as long as they are trying to keep everybody in the dark, it means that the other party is gaining ground. Okay, so not sure whether women are more free now to go on the street without being forced to wear their veil or not. But building on my experience in Iran, unfortunately, I haven't been there since 2007. But even before 2007, women, of course, they had to wear a headscarf, but it was like a fashion statement. They put it on their head flying, so half of their hair is showing, and you can tell that if this person is conservative wearing hijab because she chose to wear hijab, or she is just complying with the law because she doesn't want to be arrested. I mean, Iranian women are very, very exceptional. They're on the street all the time. The first time I went there, it was 2001, and the last time 2007. I was surprised with the number of women on the street, moving around, working, having fun, etc. And I think it has something to do with the with Shiism in specific, because I don't know if you know or not, but Shiism as doctrine is based on the daughter of Prophet Muhammad,
Right.
Fatima.
Mhm.
Okay, and her husband.
And her husband.
It's the daughter and her husband. And the husband, of course, is a cousin of the Prophet, but it's the daughter.
Mhm.
So women in Shiism play a significant role in the history of the doctrine itself. Okay, so there is this sense of pride that we're daughters of Fatima,
Mhm.
and you cannot really separate. It has nothing to do with being religious or not. It's just the cultural aspect
Right.
of being the daughters of. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm a little pessimistic when it comes to governments giving in,
Mhm.
but I think changing. It's changing on the ground. My main fear, following the news in Iran, was the societal disputes over the need to control women's body.
Mhm.
And this is my main fear, that societies in general, and especially conservative societies, feel that they have to control women's body. And actually, it's all societies, not even conservative societies, because liberal societies feel that they have to control women's body by covering or uncovering. So it's the same. At the end of the bottom line, it's the same. Being forced either to dress or not to dress. I remember watching very alarming videos of people fighting, average people fighting with young girls deciding to take off their veil.
Mhm.
And this was really scary to me, more than the authorities trying to suppress women, because this is more scale, more violent.
Okay, coming back to a point that we picked up from your talk yesterday about like mothers just protesting outside just to find out if their children are alive or not, to find out where they're buried if not alive. Based on your experience in Iran and your scholarly expertise, can you explain like how that situation like mentally for a mother just to go out and protest or go out and just ask the government, is my child alive? If not, can you tell me where his remains are?
I think this is a very difficult moment, and it's very motherly thing. That sometimes mother, she just want to know where she can go to recite some Quran or read some verses from the Bible and feel near to her kids, even if the kid is not alive. But she needs to feel the connection. But sometimes, even if the sad reality is that my kid is not alive anymore, but at least some comfort will be in knowing that he or she is first buried with dignity, and I can visualize this kid even under the ground. I remember there was an old incident in Iran of maybe 2013, 2014, Rihanna. Rihanna was a bird who was sent to death because she killed her rapist. A guy raped her and she killed him in the process. And the judge simply sent her to death. And she wrote a very, very, very moving letter to her mom, telling, I don't want to, I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the line that you taught me that to love the world, but unfortunately the world does not love us. And it was really moving. And I think Rihanna is dead now, but the legacy is alive. And the grief of the mother is alive. But sometimes it might mean, in terms of gains, what are you going to benefit just to know where your kid is? But for a mother, it means a lot. Means a lot. It means accountability. You did it to my son or my daughter, and the body of my son or my daughter is the proof that you did it.
All through the protests in Iran, we read about Bolia Ghafouri's arrest, who was a Kurdish football star who stood up for the issue. Then I was on ground in Qatar during the World Cup when the Iranian national team, they first refused to sing the national anthem. That time they were supported by the general public, but then they were threatened by the government, and they were in fear of their family's safety. So then they had to comply with the government's request, and then they had to sing the national anthem in the next game. And they were whole public as a mass. They were against the Iranian men's team. So they had to, when it comes to a question like protesting for the basic, while protesting for the basic rights, but I have to protect my family as well. So in that situation, as a man who wants to stand up for people around him, irrespective man, women, it does not matter, just for the basic rights. Like what sort of expectations are there is what I want to know.
Well, as much as we expect it from women, we expect more from men.
Right.
You're a man, you should stand up. Okay? And this is actually does not recognize or respect the limitations. As you said, they had a family.
Mm-hmm.
They had their families were living in Iran, and they need to protect their family.
Right.
So I think they the first time they refused to sing, they told the story. They said the message. That was it. The second time they complied, even better, because everybody now knows that they did it because they were asked or forced or talked into doing this, and that's what matters. For me, it's about symbols. It's about the narratives. So this is what it takes. Now we know that even the national team is not happy. More than enough.
Right. Okay, now my last question from my side. More than a scholar on Iranian politics, as a woman, as I would say, a Muslim woman, what does the phrase women, life, freedom, Zan Zindagi, Azadi mean to you?
It means a lot, because I remember I'm veiled, okay, but liberal veiled. I'm not conservatively veiled, okay. And I remember when I was in Iran, especially the last visits, I didn't take off my veil, but I kind of wore it the way they do, the more liberal. And I remember having a colleague coming to me and saying, "Why are you doing this? You are veiled. Why are you not removing, but kind of loosening it a little bit?" And I told her that out of solidarity, I don't want them to feel that they are alone. Though I believe that veil is a religious duty, but at the same time, I believe that it's the woman's choice to comply with the religious duty, and it's not my business if anyone else is deciding to wear or not to wear. For women, freedom, life, it's everything. It's just, and it doesn't mean that I want to take this right from men or to take this right from someone else. It's just, why can't we just simply respect the right to live? And even if I believe that your choices are not the right choices, it's your life, ruin it. As long as you're not ruining my life, it's your life, ruin it.
We are recording this episode just about 1 month since the conflict began in Israel and Palestine. Both the United States and the European Union have designated Hamas as a terrorist organization. Do you have any examples or experience to tell our audience of a Palestinian mother and their role in counterterrorism or peace building?
I'm not a politician. Okay, so naming groups as terrorist groups is not my job or my interest. Okay, and I think we need to contextualize when we are naming groups. Okay, so for me, it would be too difficult to put ISIS, Al Qaeda, Taliban in the same sentence with Hamas. It's a different context. Okay, and this is a very important point to start with. Okay. Second, I believe it would be too difficult after losing 5,000 lives of women and children, 10,000 lives Palestinians in a month. Maybe it would be too unrealistic to talk about women and peace, because I was thinking the other day about mothers and building peace. Are there any mothers left in Palestine to build peace, to teach their kids about peace? It's very difficult. But if we try, and I think this is very tragic moment, and it's a missing opportunity. It is where we missed opportunities by this tragic development, by this tragic attacks and massacre happening in Gaza. Okay, so if you want me to share an experience about Palestinian women working for peace, I would share a movie that was done in 2003 by a Palestinian director. He is a son of a Jewish woman and a Palestinian guy. Both were communist, and the Jewish lady was part of building Israel, and then she joined the Communist Party, and she married the Palestinian guy, and she moved to Jenin, the camp, okay, where she spent her life working with Palestinian women, educating kids about art and theater. And she died in Jenin out of cancer after years. And this is an eye-opening example of women living together, educating the kids about the importance of survival through art. Okay, the lady, her name is Arna, and the movie is Arna's Children, and it's a documentary movie. It shows footages of her standing at checkpoints, kind of protecting Palestinian men, women, and children to pass through the checkpoints, etc. For me, it would have more sense to humanity if we build on that experience rather than deciding on simply killing 10,000 plus. Half of them are women and children, and then expect mothers to be agents of peace. Yet, on the Palestinian side, it might be too difficult to talk about this. But if you follow the demonstration on the Israeli side, the anti-war demonstration taking place right now, demonstrating in front of Netanyahu house or the parliament, the women in black, the group I talked about yesterday, they're there and they want to stop the war, and they know that it makes no sense. And it's against human rights. It's against any sense.
Following to my next question, I would also ask you, what are the impacts of this long conflict on the emotional and psychological well-being of mothers, and how can these aspects be addressed?
I have no clue. It's amazing their ability to resist. Meaning that following videos, techniques, Palestinian women trying to adhere to normality is actually scary. I mean, there are photos of women trying to give their kids a bath in the middle of a wrecked building. Photos of women baking a cake for a birthday, celebrating the birthday in the middle of the wreck. A very, very heartbreaking photo of a woman preparing her infant to be buried. She's just wrapping him in the kufiyah, and she seems composed. And for me, I cannot describe it in words, because as a mother myself, I cannot imagine the pain. But also, as a mother, she needs to survive because of the other kids, not only her kids, but the kids who lost their mother in the war. And there is this sense of responsibility that this is going to end, and we need someone to take care of the kids. Who is going to do this? It's the women. Definitely, when this is over, I think part of the reconstruction, we need to pay attention to the traumas and the damage happened to Palestinian women.
How do you think gender dynamics, cultural norms, and the social expectations shape the experiences and roles of mothers in this long-standing conflict?
Okay. In the Palestinian case, I believe mothers are the barriers. They carry the history. They're the one who tell the story. they're the one who tell the story, not only the political story. They're the one who tell the story about the grandparents, the house, the cooking, the embroidery, the small little details, the songs. How do we celebrate marriage? How do we celebrate having a new baby? And this is important because it's not only about the political negotiation over the land. It's how we narrate in order to maintain the memory, the collective memory. Okay, so I think this is the main role women are playing. And definitely, some of them are playing political roles, etc. But my focus and my interest is this role.
Just wanted to ask you another question.
Yes, sure.
We saw one of your TED talks from I think 2014
Yes,
about more like street politics,
yes.
and in terms of like the cultural structure in the way like the Arabian Gulf and the Persian Gulf is structured, and like how do you expect? It's very difficult for women to just go out and protest in general, especially if you take the Arabian Gulf, and we've seen a lot of changes in terms of. I'm talking about the changes in Saudi and how things have loosened, but yet the ability to go out and protest for especially for women, is very difficult. What recommendation would you give, like, for them to?
It's not about going out to protest. It's about going out, being present in the public spaces, being visible in the public spaces. The ability of women to occupy, in the good sense, the public spaces. When I teach my students that men don't have to justify why they are in the public space. It's their right. Women have to justify, have to say a reason that you're going out. But so for me, street politics is not only about protest, it's about the ability to be in the street and the daily little strategies used by women to be present and visible and to take it as a right. This is what I mean by street politics.
I don't know if you know, there was a couple of arrests in Chicago yesterday for protesting against the current conflict in Israel and Palestine. So as students, especially involved in politics and public policy, what sort of, again, I'm asking for your expertise, your recommendation on like what are the best ways to get our voice out there, like our rights, our like what our basic, I would say, just getting ourselves out there.
Well, you know your context, so I'm not in a position to give you advices in this regard. But my only thing is that it's amazing that it's as the war on the ground is taking place, there is another war of narratives, and this is the new thing happening. That people get to see other narratives. People have access to other narratives, and no one can take this from you. Maybe the right to protest might be, restricted or something, but no one can take your right to tell your story. And I think this is the way to go. It's a very long road, but it's very sustainable. It's very sustainable.
One last question from my side. Like, from listening to you over the last 2 days, we seriously look up to you as a person.
You shouldn't.
No, as an academic, as a scholar, as a mother. So, who do you look up to?
This is difficult. I look up to all the brave mothers who are not as privileged as myself, are less lucky, but still they wake up in the morning and they have something to tell to their kids. A Palestinian woman doesn't know if she's going to wake up in the morning or not because of the bombing, but she still has the ability to dress her kids and to bake a cake. There is no way of comparing my life to her life. I cannot complain. I have zero to complain about. And so I look up to them. I look up to mothers all over the world who lost their kids because of terrorism, because of war, and they kind of moved forward beyond the loss of a child and tried to save the rest of the children, not only in Palestine, but anywhere.
There is a last thing about this conflict I would like to ask you. What are the organizations or activists that you are following that can help provide our audience with more information what is happening on the ground?
Well, I've been thinking about this question since yesterday, and I decided I will not recommend anyone because I think it's enough telling people what to listen to and or what to follow. I think it's more important to tell the people that you need to search for yourself and find a narrative that makes you go to bed at night feeling that you tried. You tried to know the truth. You tried to know what's really happening on the ground. It's not someone recommending, speaking against anyone. But I truly feel that I can give you a long list, organizations, websites, people to follow, but I will be doing the same that I criticize, that not you, but the other side is telling you that this is the absolute truth. And as the radical groups, they tell you this is the absolute truth. No, search it for yourself. And you're living you're very lucky. You have the internet. You can decide for yourself.
What is something you wish we would have asked you?
I don't know. Maybe about my kids.
Are they well?
Yes.
That's so good.
About my dogs.
Yeah. How many?
I have 2 dogs.
Amazing.
And a cat.
Yeah. Good to know. Thinking about our audience, there are mainly young public policy students. If there was one paper or one book or even another movie that you could recommend to our audience to watch or to read, which one would be?
Okay. There is a beautiful movie done by a Lebanese director. Her name is Nadine Labki. Okay. And the movie is a little bit old, but it's very beautiful. I show it in my class every year. It's called Halla Luwain. And now where to? Okay. Extremely beautiful. Okay. Very moving, but it's nice. Okay. There is this recent book I just discovered. The subtitle is Beyond the Crying Mothers. It's by Springer, 2023. I'm sorry, I can't remember the main title of the book. And it's it's an edited book, and it's not public policy thing, but it discusses different roles of women in building peace as mothers. And the subtitle is really, really interesting, Beyond the Crying Mothers. These are my 2 recommendations.
Thank you very much. It was an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, and I hope people listening to the podcast would make them think, reflect about new things.
I'm sure about it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Root of Conflict featuring Dr. Amal Hamada. This episode was produced and edited by Hannah Balikci and Nishita Karun. Thank you to our interviewers, Jordan Enos, Raphael, Rony, Antony, and Isabella Pestana. Special thanks to UC3P and the Pearson Institute for their continued support of this series. For more information on the Pearson Institute's research and events, visit their website, pearsoninstitute.org, and follow them on Twitter at PearsonInst. Inst is spelled INST. Thank you.